Welcome to the M26FIT Podcast, where we explore the connection between having a strong mind and a strong body.
Okay, today's guest is Katie Staggs to share her incredible story of transformation. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Hello, thanks for having me, Magnus.
Perfect. Now, you've come from surviving not one, but 2 suicide attempts to racing in Spartan events, 10-kilometre runs, and a half marathon in Melbourne later this year. That's a pretty awesome achievement.
It's pretty crazy. I think I still wake up sometimes and I'm like, wow, look at this.
Yeah. So before we get into your amazing transformation, could you just give us a little bit of the Katie backstory for us, like childhood and stuff?
Oh, I am the oldest of 2 siblings. So I'm like the firstborn fun one. And then I have a younger brother who's pretty cool. So him and I grew up like best friends. So I'm pretty lucky that we had us to do that together, our life together with. Got great parents, graduated high school, always got myself into a bit of trouble out of high school, as you do when you turn 18. You just see what life throws you.
Yeah. So Brisbane born and bred?
Yes.
Yep. Brisbane.
Actually says on my passport that I was born in Sunnybank, which always gets great questions when you're overseas because they have no idea where Sunnybank is. But yeah, that's me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So depression's one thing, and I think many think about suicide attempts, but you actually did, and you nearly died twice. Can you just provide some insights on how you felt, what drove you to actually trying to kill yourself?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pinpoint because for me it didn't just happen like it was an overnight spur of the moment thing that happened. Yeah. It was a series of events that kind of led to that over years of kind of half dealing with things but then really not dealing with things. But there was a certain point where just the best way to describe it is like the lights turned off in your head and you couldn't see a single thing out. So you couldn't reason with anyone about it. People were trying to give you like motivational quotes and it was like lights were inside, just turned off. And yeah, for me, there was no hope. For me, I was like, I don't want to live like this. You can't just walk around life with the lights off in your head. And everyone else around you just keeps moving and you're still stuck. Yeah. But I was still presenting myself pretty well that people didn't quite realise how dark I actually had gone. So
how long ago was that?
I think I really started messing around with my mental health probably 2018.
Yep.
And then I kind of dealt with it and we got a nice little Band-Aid on there and I thought I got there. Yeah. Turns out I hadn't. So I kind of really, really hit rock bottom 2021. So just after COVID, I spiraled at the beginning of that year really quite quickly out of it just all of a sudden lights went out and you could it scared me because I was like I was doing really well and all of a sudden now I'm not and I can't. It wasn't like everyone's like, oh, just get out of bed and flick a switch. It wasn't like that. You just couldn't. I was done and I couldn't. It's hard to explain. All of a sudden lights went out and you couldn't do a thing to get them to turn back on.
Yeah. So that was in 21.
Yep.
Do you mind just sort of sharing what led up to it exactly?
Yeah, I think there was a few different like traumatic events that had happened over the years that had resurfaced. Your body's got this incredible way of masking trauma. And so for a lot of people, they don't deal with it for over a decade. And all of a sudden one day you can be somewhere, something will happen and it brings it to the surface. And then you've got like decades worth of emotions to deal with all of a sudden. And if you don't have the right tools in your belt, you've got no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And so because for me, I'd already had some issues with alcohol and things like that, I just went back to that again very quickly because I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to feel anything. So I just went down a really dark, I think it was a 2-week period. All of a sudden it just went downhill. And then I actually overdosed. And look, I'm not proud of it. But I'm also okay to talk about it because I think it's important that we do and we don't sugarcoat it. I was lucky enough that my housemates found me and got me the help that I needed, but the ambulance took about 90 minutes to arrive. So my housemates literally kept me alive while calling my mother, who then called other people, like my dad and that. And then, unfortunately, then to be told at the hospital I'd done it wrong. So you're already like feeling down and you can't do anything right in life, and then you get that wrong too. And they actually told me what I did wrong. And if I had done this, then I would have been gone.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, I think they did it in a way to scare me back to life, but it did the exact opposite. And then 3 days later, I ended up back in hospital because they discharged me, and I did it again, but apparently the right way.
3 days later.
3 days later. And I should be dead. And I don't say that to gloat in any shape or form, but you got to realize how far off the edge I was to understand it's such a miracle that I'm sitting here talking to you about it in a hopeful way. Because I remember that night at the hospital, it was 2 a.m. and I was refusing treatment and then negotiating with me about saving my life. And it was COVID, so my family are stuck outside, no idea. At one point they were told I was discharged, and so there was a couple of hour period where they had no idea where I was. Turns out I'd just been transferred to a different hospital. And then you wake up in a psych ward, lying in bed being like, well, what do I do now? I'm alive. I don't want to be alive. You guys have saved me. And I've actually had that conversation with the nurse. I said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, you've kept me alive against my wishes. Now what? Is this my life, is it?
So what was their response to that?
I think they were a little bit like, oh, you'll thank us one day. And I just looked at them and I was like, I actually think I said to my family that they were cruel for saving me. And I was in a really dark place. Yeah. They're all cheering that I'm alive, and I'm on the opposite side being like, and the first day of, I think it was the second day in hospital, they make you write down what you're grateful for every day. And it used to really bother me because when you're in there, you're like, well, if I had something to be grateful for, I wouldn't be here. But in my journal, I've got it written. It says, I'm grateful that my family think it's great I'm alive today.
So you found something.
I just wrote that and the nurses were like, yeah, okay. And the next day would come and I'd just write the same sentence down. Because for me, I didn't understand it. But for me, family, they were stoked.
Yeah. So how long were you in the psych ward for? They obviously didn't discharge you after you did it again after 3 days. So
No, they definitely didn't on that time. I think that time was about 3 to 4 weeks in there. That's in a public facility, so they don't have the facilities to look after people long term.
This is still COVID too.
There's still COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a lockdown. Nobody was allowed in, so no visitors. It's very, very locked down. And then I ended up in a private facility later that year, on and off for another couple of months. Yeah. So very different experiences, public versus private.
Yeah. So how long were you in those in care?
All up that year, about 5 months.
5 months.
It's a very long time. Yeah.
It's an incredibly long time.
It's very isolating, and then you add COVID. So sometimes people are allowed visitors, but when we did there was a lockdown period in one of them, so nobody in, nobody out, it's a whole nother ball game because patients everybody's on edge. Yeah. Nurses are doing the best they can. The vending machine got emptied and they can't restock it. So everybody that would go get your treat, there's nothing. You can't get Uber Eats delivered. That was another thing we used to. You'd make friends and we'd get pizza delivered. Can't do that. So it was very, very, very locked down. There was nothing. And you're isolated. Yeah. And you're mentally not coping. So. And
what about medication? Are you fairly drugged up during that time?
In a public facility, yes. That's the best. Look, they've got limited resources. I'm going to be honest. The nurses and staff in there are phenomenal. They've got very limited resources. The best they can do is kind of medicate you to function. Whereas private facility, there's a lot more focus on group therapy and things like that and making sure you're on the right medication.
So you went from the public facility and then ended up into a private facility.
Yep.
And the private facility, what were the main variances, would you say, between the two?
They had a lot more resource,
Yeah.
a lot more one-on-one care. They were able to do more program-based things throughout the day because they have the funding.
Yeah.
This is where it's different, and it's unfortunate because I was classified as privileged in the system because I had private health insurance, whereas others, they just got discharged again and got discharged again, and we're stuck in that cycle. Whereas in the other one, there's that hope of rehabilitation and to get you moving.
Yeah.
So it's two totally different. But if you become acute in a private facility, you're straight back into the public one. So it's a very interesting system.
Yeah, okay. Was there a game-changing moment that triggered your transformation from that depth of depression, into obviously the Katie we see now, fit and healthy and active and loving life?
I think there was a moment on my third stay that I went back in, and I actually rang my psychiatrist, and I was functioning at that point, but I wasn't. I was masked functioning. And I rang him and I said, I'd like to come back in. And he said, you do not feel safe? And I said, I don't feel safe, but I don't want to go down the path that I did last time. I want to do it. I want to come in and get help. And he said, okay. And he said, I can't get you in today. And I said, can you get me in tomorrow? And they could. And so I sat down actually with my mum and dad and I said, I'm going to go back in. And they're like, oh, but you're fine. And I said, I'm not. I'm masking again. And I want to be well. So I actually went in that time. I remember it was very different walking through those doors because I knew that I was going in to do the group therapy properly, listen to what they had to say, make sure my medication was right, maybe lower doses where I had to on other things, and really do that. It was different when I walked in because I remember when I walked out that time, they actually do this thing where they clap you out, other patients. It's a big deal when someone gets discharged. And I knew when I left that I wasn't coming back in a good way. And they knew. Yeah. And it was this really powerful moment where you had to put the hard work in and I had to dig deep. It wasn't pretty, but it was different that time because I was going in for me, not because I was trying to keep my family or my friends happy and keep up appearances. I was ready to go, no, I'm doing this for Katie and Katie only. So, yeah.
What a great decision.
Yeah.
That was still 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it was wild.
So you think the biggest difference then that it was actually the first time you sort of going in by your own choice?
I think that was definitely a difference in it because you do things to keep your loved ones happy, especially because you already feel like a burden. You don't want to make them feel, you don't want to make it any worse. So you're kind of doing it just to tick boxes to keep them happy. In the nicest way, it's just how you do it. But then all of a sudden I was like, well, hang on, no, I don't want this to be my life. Is this it? I don't want to be stuck like this. They keep saving me for some reason. I got to make something it's got to mean something. It's this, yeah.
Was there a change in medication as well? Because obviously there's a lot with that particular to get you on that correct medication as well. Yeah,
I had to do 2 medication changes, which puts your body through hell is the understatement. I had to spend 3 weeks in bed for one of them. I did that in hospital. I didn't do it outside. It was a disaster.
Because you literally got a detox off one.
You got a detox off one. And because of previous issues with opioids, they couldn't put me on any medications that were addictive. Yeah. So I was in a different category of medication. So to come off them is a very different, you've got to do it under medical supervision. And I highly stress the importance of that. Don't ever think you can just come off medication on your own. You've got to do it the right way because your body changes. The chemical makeup in your brain shifts. It was like I was under a strobe light constantly 24/7. But once they got me on the right medication that my body responded to chemically, I was a whole new person because I had a chemical imbalance that was treatment resistant. So it's a fascinating, and that's why you need good professionals that have that extra knowledge that Dr. Google can't.
Yeah. So you had the culmination, obviously, you had some childhood trauma and stuff, but you physically had a chemical imbalance in
because of the trauma, it it changes the way your brain functions. It was a very fascinating journey to learn about how all these different things impacted all different parts of my life. But once I got the medication sorted, I was a whole new person.
Game changer.
Game changer.
Okay. The M26 in 26, you ready?
Game on.
Okay. So how are you feeling right now? 1 out of 10, how would you describe your current mindset?
I reckon probably like an 8. I'm an 8. I'm in the midst of training for this half marathon, so there's been some harder days. Getting out of bed in the cold weather's not my... but I'm feeling probably the most disciplined I've been and future focused. So I know where I want to go in life and I'm willing to make the sacrifices to get me there now.
That's fantastic. Awesome to hear. Who's the smartest person you've sat in a room with?
I was recently at a conference in Sydney. And there's a guy, CEO of World Vision. I'm pretty sure his name's Daniel Wordsmith. I'm not going to get it right. The way he talks about social change is next level like I have. And he's just like, well, just get out there and do it. And the way he just captures life, but like fixes problems smartly, doesn't just go in and put a Band-Aid on problems in refugee camps. He just his mind was, I've listened to like all the rest of his podcasts since that conference being like, who is this guy? And like the way his mind works is fascinating.
Oh, fantastic. What's been the most important lesson that you've ever learned?
Life can change very quickly and the little moments count more than you realise.
And your definition of discipline?
I think discipline's the where you've got your vision and where you want to be. And the discipline's that middle part that's going to get you there. And it's going to mean, getting up early to do your runs in the morning even when you don't want to. Or for me, sometimes sleeping in my activewear to make sure that the next morning there's no excuse for me to get out of bed. But the discipline parts, you just got to remember why you're doing it, why you started, and you just got to keep going. That's
So through those tough times, you just refocus on the vision.
Keep refocusing. Keep refocusing.
Well done. I think obviously this time of year is the toughest time of the year to be getting up on those
it's a bit cold,
dark mornings to go for the run. So, but that'll all pay off, I reckon. When's the marathon on?
October 15th. It's gonna be good. I hope it's good weather. Down
in sunny Melbourne, hopefully.
It better be sunny.
And that finishes, I believe, at the MCG. Is that right?
It does. I'm very excited. Yeah, I think you've got to run one lap inside the MCG, and then you cross that finish line. And I'm very excited.
You'll probably keep running.
Yeah. Just don't stop. Keep going.
Do another victory lap. The greatest decision you've ever made?
Being brave enough to speak up with where I was at, and having brutally honest conversations. I think there was a couple in there. I couldn't probably bring it back to one singular one, but there was a few brutally honest conversations with people that had to happen about where I was at. And I'm so grateful I did. Yeah.
And what's been the most practical advice that you've ever received?
That actually, I had a manager text me years ago. I think I've still got the text, and she said, "It's a new day today, Katie, and you get the choice whether you're getting out of bed or not today." And I've read that first part and almost like closed the text, and then I read it again because you're in control, and you get to choose what you do today. So she said, if you choose to stay in bed today, that's totally fine, but that's your choice, or you can choose to get out of bed and give it a go.
When did you receive that message? Was that during your tough time or
that
recently?
Was during one of the tough, it was pretty brutal, but I still am grateful she sent that text because I've kind of carried that. Well, I get a choice today. I'm having a bad mental health day. Am I getting out of bed? Or I can choose to stay. That's totally within my rights, but is it going to get me anywhere?
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. So what drives you, Katie? What gives you inspiration?
I'm so passionate about living life now and taking other people on the journey with me as well. Like I go do sunrise, for example, but I think I've invited almost everybody I know to a sunrise adventure with me because I'm like, you got to experience this. And then they hate me in the morning, but once we're at sunrise, they love me again, because they're like, oh wow, this is what you're talking about. And I went, yeah. So I think I'm passionate about living life, but also helping other people experience that too, the joy of those simple things.
It's amazing, isn't it? That sunrise is absolutely glorious, particularly, again, I think at this time of year.
Yep. It's up a bit later, so you don't have to get up as early.
Exactly. Share a favourite childhood memory.
Ooh. We used to do this thing on Sundays. It was Family Day, and we dubbed it 2 Ice Cream Day. So we were always a family, like you have one ice cream and whatever, but on Sunday, if it was Family Day, you were allowed to ask for a second ice cream. And I remember one day, I can't remember if it was mum or dad that said yes. And I was like, 2 ice cream day. And like I'm 27 now. And I still ask dad sometimes, hey, is it 2 ice cream Sunday? And he's a sucker for it. So we sometimes still get 2 ice cream Sunday.
What a great story.
Yeah.
2 ice creams. What are you passionate about? What do you get excited about?
I get very passionate about football. I know that sounds like but I have to be really careful who I watch football with, because I kind of yell at the TV. That's like my first part of that answer. And then passionate about...
Which team?
Tottenham Hotspur. They're playing in Perth and Dad's there, but I'm not. Thanks, Dad, for the invite. No, I'm kidding. I've seen another game with Dad, so that's fine. I'm passionate about people just realising how extraordinary they are. We live in a world where people it's like they seek this validation, but if they just could capture a single moment of how extraordinary they are, they'd go so far in life without needing the validation of someone else to tell them that. Yeah.
So you can try and help people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at work I'm known. I'm like, do you know how extraordinary you are? And they're like, oh, pardon? And I said, you're an extraordinary human being. Thanks for showing up today. And they're like, people don't know what to say to that, because people don't tend to speak life into that. Yeah.
Describe a typical day that you would have had when you were in those mental health facilities. Just walk us through what a typical day would be like.
Because of COVID, I had to eat breakfast in your room, which was a shame because it kind of limited your connection time with other people. So it was very isolated experience that I had compared to what probably people would have now. So you do breakfast, meds in the morning, then you do group therapy. You do your first 1 or 2 sessions. So they all have different focus points.
How many's in a group?
Maybe 12.
Okay.
12. And then you kind of have a break, which was great because they always did really good cheese and crackers. I had like beeline out of group therapy for my cheese and crackers. And then you do another session. And then I normally find there's like a courtyard in the middle. So I was able to go sit in the sun for a bit as well. And then from 3 p.m. onwards, it was like visiting hours. So once I was at a certain point, because people obviously couldn't come in all the time, I was allowed to go out for like an hour to go for a walk, for example. So normally like I'd convince a friend to come visit me and drop me off coffee. I love my flat white coffee. So someone would come and meet me outside and we'd go for a walk and then come back and then dinner and then you're in your room again, essentially. It's pretty isolating in there, but it was good because it gave me time to think things through and I couldn't rely on anyone else. It's just me in there.
Yeah.
So it was good in a way.
What are you most grateful for?
The fact that I can feel emotions again. There was a very long time where I couldn't feel a single thing. I was very, very numb, and that was on my own doing. But like I can cry when I'm outside in the rain and I can feel the rain on my skin, and I can feel that. That can almost makes me teary. Or I'm somewhere out and I'm with my friends and I can feel the sun on my skin. I'm like, I'm alive and I can actually feel that. Or some movie will make me cry and then you'll find me laughing. And everyone's like, why are you laughing? I'm like, because I can feel it, like I'm connecting with this or something. Yeah, the fact that I can feel again is, yeah.
So is that experience, do you think, made you more sensitive, or do you think you were like that prior to?
In some ways more sensitive. Thanks, I've got a good counsellor that I spoke that through with, because I didn't want to become like this oversensitive person.
No.
But you balance it. So like, I think it's made me more in tune with life. And I'm like, oh geez, I'm feeling happy right now. So it's probably kept me more in tune than anything, and being able to articulate better how I'm feeling about something. So even if someone was to upset me, I'd be able to articulate that a lot clearer than you upset me.
Yeah.
And then I'd be able to dig deeper and actually work out what was actually going on, not just a surface level. Yeah.
So you can physically apply and name the emotions of what you're experiencing. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Many people are unsure what their purpose is. Do you know what yours is? Pretty deep question.
It's a very deep question. Purpose. I think my purpose now, like on the other side, is to live my life to the fullest, whatever that looks like, because life changes. There's different seasons in life, but I kind of want to get to the end of my life and be like, I did everything I could, and I stopped and I helped people, and I had my goals, but I didn't let that take out other people in the journey. So I think I want to get to the end and be like, I made it, but I had a really good time doing it as well.
Yeah.
And people came along with me, and I got to do it with people, not on my own. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
During all of your struggles, was there a standout low point that you remember, and how and what got you through it?
I remember lying in the hospital bed. I think it was about 2, 3 a.m. I realised I was alive still.
Was this after the second one?
Yeah, second. I was lying there, and that was probably the darkest I've ever gotten. And there was all this commotion in the hospital because there's other emergencies they're dealing with. And I was just lying there in this bed, just like,
in the ER?
In the ER, you know, just like, ooh. No one's even noticed me. Like, what am I, like, but you're kind of just stuck in that in-between. What got me through? I'm not 100% sure at that point, to be honest. I think my family, really stood in the gap for me in that period. I know there was a lot of prayers being prayed at that point, and maybe that's what carried me through in that moment, because I was not, I was at my darkest then. And I think I remember, like, I looked down at my phone and there was so many text messages from family members saying love you and all of that. So clearly they still saw something in me when I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need that, don't you, having those loved ones around you. And
you really, really do.
And they believed in you.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really, at the time I didn't know why. But I think that's what made the difference with my journey transformation, is I had people in my corner. Yeah. Whereas not everyone has that.
No. No. Very blessed. Your view on nutrition. What do you feed both your mind and your body?
I think nutrition is so important, because, like, you can go to the gym all you want, right? But if on the way home you're having a Big Mac every time, you're probably not going to see the results you're looking for.
No. And
you got to be fueling your body right so you can output well. And that's like I had to learn with this Spartan race, is I actually wasn't eating enough food, or the right foods apparently. Shout out to my PT for helping me out with my protein intake. But it's vital to the way the rest of your body functions. Yeah. So if you're not fueling your body with the right foods, you can't be expecting it to then output at its best performance. Like, sure, have a cheat meal, but if you're cheat mealing 3 times a day, you're probably not going to get the results or feel well, let alone, it's a holistic approach to things. You can't just be like, I'm going to the gym every day and then not taking care of yourself on the other, 12 hours of that day. It's a holistic approach to your health. Yeah.
Just talk us through the Spartan race. Like, what on earth, like, you've gone from...
Oh, look. I wanted a goal.
A big one.
I kind of wanted a big one, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something. I'm not an athletic. I've never been an athletic girl. I think when I told my family, they laughed. Like they had that nervous laugh, like, oh, really? Are you sure you want to? What does that actually involve? I didn't show them any videos of what it involved until like the last minute. But I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something that was so outside of my comfort zone and conquer it. And then I wanted to raise money for Black Dog Institute for all the research they do. And so I did it. And most people run it in a team. So I thought, why not run it solo? Like, let's make it even harder than what it already is. And that was to like represent the 9 we lose every day in Australia to suicide. So it was a solidarity thing. But look, I did it. No injuries. So I wanted to finish it in like 3 hours was my goal. And I think I finished in 1:40. So I like full send blitzed it. But a lot of that was mental strength. So I think because of the journey I'd already been on, I was so mentally strong that where my body lacked, my mental picked up for. Yeah, because I completed almost all the obstacles, which I wasn't expecting either. So, yeah, I conquered a Spartan race.
Well done.
Yeah.
No, that's inspirational.
It's worth doing. There's one next year.
Okay. We should team up.
We should team up.
You know what you're doing.
It'd be easier. And it actually would be way easier.
Yeah, because some of the obstacles you kind of need some assistance to get over.
Yes. I made a couple of friends in the race.
As you do.
They're like, are you running solo? And I was like, yep. Yeah, and they're like, that's crazy. And I'm like, yep. They said, do you want to borrow our knee? And I said, that would be really great, thank you. Yeah. So I made some friends along the way, which was really special.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you have a favourite saying?
There's a movie, We Bought a Zoo. It's got Matt Damon in it, and he's talking to his son. It says, all you need is 20 seconds of insane bravery, and I promise you no matter what happens, something beautiful will come from it. That stuck with me.
I like that.
That's how I do this. I'm like 20 seconds of insane bravery right at the beginning and I'll be fine.
That's a good one. I like that. If you could change one thing in the world, what would that be?
I wish as humans we could, there's another saying about you walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I wish we did that quicker as a society. I wish we could, before we go quick to judge or quick to stereotype or quick to, pass judgment, we took a moment to pause and consider what their journey is. Because if you saw me like this today, you wouldn't know my story. You wouldn't know that's why I react a certain way with certain things. But I think if we could all just take a moment and pause before we responded to certain things, I think we'd make the world a much nicer place to live in. Yeah.
Your definition of success.
I get asked this question a lot at work. The managers, the higher-ups love to ask this question, and I'll answer it the same as how I do. It's when you get to the end of the day and you've achieved your goal, whatever that is, but you did it together. Because there's nothing worse in life than ending up at the finish line and you're standing there by yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's, who are you going to share that with?
Yeah.
Whereas like as a team, I know when we get to the end of a work day and we've achieved something, I love looking back at the store and everyone's got this smile on their face because we did it together. Yes. It didn't matter how crazy it got or how success is doing, for me anyway, doing it together. Like you get to the end, you go, you know what, we did that together. Because when I was weak, you were stronger for me.
Yeah, so true. Apart from running marathons, do you have a favourite sport or physical activity that you enjoy?
I've really enjoyed hiking. I just keep adding more hikes to the list that I want to do.
Where do you hike?
I've done a couple this year at Springbrook.
Yep.
So I've done the big 14K one, Wari circuit, which is just, it's stunning.
There's a bit of elevation in that too, isn't it?
Yeah, because you start at the top and go down.
Yep.
And then you finish by going back up. So which makes it considerably harder. And you've got to do it anti-clockwise. If you do it clockwise, you'll end up with 500 stairs at the end. So I remembered to go anti-clockwise. But I love hiking. I like that you're out there and outside. I don't run on treadmills very well. I hate it. I hate being inside. I find it claustrophobic.
Me too.
So anytime you can get outside and explore somewhere new, and just push yourself a little bit, because when you're hiking, you've got to back yourself that you can finish it.
Yep.
You're going to make sure you got the right snacks and nutrition, but you've got to back yourself to get back. And I do like the thrill of that.
That's a good point, because like you said, it's not like you can just stop halfway and call an Uber.
No, get on an e-scooter back. You've got to back yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Daily actions, habits. Name 3 things that you do consistently every day.
I still do my gratitude journal. As much as I hated that, it does work. So even if it's 3 things you're grateful for or 1, just that daily habit of pausing to realize how the good in life.
Do you do that in the morning or the evening?
I normally do it on my way to work, and then sometimes I need to do it on the way home if I've had a rougher day. I have to do it on the way home as well. Then other things I do, always reach out to friends. Always just send a text to someone. If I think of them, I always send the text. And the third thing, I don't always nail it, but I always try and get good sleep, because I know the importance of my sleep hygiene. Yeah. Nighttime routine.
Yep. Yeah, well, there's been a lot said on that. People saying, you got to win the morning, but I've found out that you need to win that night before, otherwise you've got no chance of winning that morning.
That's correct. And there's all those statistics coming out now about the amount of hours you get of sleep before midnight, how much of a difference that makes to the next day.
Yeah. Your biggest regret, if you have any?
My first response would be to say, not getting help sooner.
But at the time, by the sound of it, you don't know.
You don't know. So that'd be the cliche answer. Biggest regret. My biggest regret in life is there's a person that was impacted my journey big time, and I never got to thank them. We weren't super, super close, but it was a work colleague, and he actually he checked me at work about my mental health. He's like, you should talk to someone. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And he was really pivotal in that, because that's when I was like, oh no, people are starting to notice. But I then I went and did my journey. And before I could even say a thank you, he actually passed away, and from mental health. And I wish I could have said something to him sooner, because I wish he'd realised the impact he'd had on my life. And we weren't even that close, but I regret the fact that I didn't get to say thank you to him, because as I was coming out of my journey, he passed. And it's just a sad.
Do you think that somehow, because he was obviously going through things personally, that he could notice you were going through?
I think so. I think when you've had any form of a mental health journey, you can normally see the cracks in other people, which is it is a blessing in a way, because you can speak life into it.
Yes.
And you can be like, hey, it's okay if you're not. You don't need to tell me you're good if you're not good. And some of those cliche answers you tell people when you're like, oh, it's just a bad day, I'm fine. You can tend to see through that, because you've used the same excuses. So I think for me now, I'm always thanking people for the parts they've played on my journey. I'm always checking on people about their mental health, because you just never know.
You absolutely don't.
No.
Goals and aspirations, Katie. What's the future look like for you?
I really want to do Everest Base Camp. That's on the list in probably the next 5 years. My friend wants me to climb to the top of Everest, and I said, absolutely not. Love you, but sorry, it's not going to happen, but I'll commit to base camp. Yeah. I'd love to live overseas at some point. With borders open, life is so short. Yeah. And I realised how easy it is to get a visa to the UK. Yep. Because I'm still under 30. That was my late night research the other night. But I just want to live a big life. I want to have kids and, travel the world and experience life to its full. Yeah. I love my job. I do. I'm a bit dorky with that. But I'm happy where I am.
Yeah. It's important though, isn't it?
It's so important. It's so vital to love what you do and be passionate about it, because it threads into other areas of your life. Yeah. So.
And by the sound of it, you get a bit of an opportunity to help a few people out.
I do. I do. I'm a sucker. I'm a big empath, as my manager would say. But I love it. I wouldn't change it. I don't mind that I'm a softie. I used to be a bit hard, so yeah.
That's super important, isn't it? You just be you.
That's right.
Just be you.
That's right.
What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of where I am now. But I think I'm proud of the people around me, because without them, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. I owe them everything. But I'm just proud of who they are, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to sit here and be proud of where I am at. I have like extraordinary people in my world, and it took me a really long time to realise that and to have a really good community around me. But I'm so proud that I'm there now and I've got this community. Yeah.
We all know how important and the benefits of laughing.
Yep.
What makes you laugh?
My brother and I send lots of reels to each other late at night, and normally like once you watch one, it just goes down. It goes downhill. Laughing. There's like, you know the Stephen meme with the dog with the teeth?
No.
Like Stephen with a PH? Google it up. I was going to pull the face, but then I realised there's probably a camera filming this. That makes me laugh just to...
Yeah, okay.
Because it's just stupid. Like you just got to have fun in, like, life can be so serious. You need a few funny memes. The Stephen meme just makes me, because there's so many different variations of it now. Yeah.
It's good for our mental health too, isn't it? Laughing,
You have to laugh. You have to laugh. I remember there was a moment in hospital that was a really stressful situation. Story for another time. But I found myself laughing because there's nothing else to do at that point. But you have to release what you're feeling. So I'm all about laughing, especially at the inappropriate time. I'm known for that.
What about I just thought of, so in that group therapy session, was it laughter encouraged, any of those sessions?
Yeah, there was a few moments where it got a bit serious, like really, really serious.
And that's when you laughed?
Yeah, I got a nervous laugh. But it was good because it kind of broke the tension of the room, because everyone else was feeling it. I just didn't have the capacity to cover it up. Yeah. So I started laughing. But it was a nice moment because it kind of broke us out of like the deep funk that was happening. Because
it's contagious too, isn't it?
Yeah. I made eye contact with the girl beside me. Then she started, and then I tried to excuse myself, and it was just, there was no point in excusing myself because the whole room was laughing at this point. But I tend to just laugh at myself a lot. I'm a dork, and that's okay. You got to be able to laugh at yourself too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
3 great books that you've read what would you recommend?
Fierce Conversations by Suzanne Scott. That was a real game changer. I read that at like 19. A book by Lisa Turkerist named The Best Yes, about what to say yes to and when you're going to have to say no to things in life. And Rising Strong by Brene Brown, Power of Vulnerability, and they're my 3 top ones.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. The best advice you could give anyone that's suffering from a mental health condition?
Reach out. It sounds so simple, but the more of us that reach out, the stronger we are together. And then to the people around them, reach out to them, because sometimes it's very hard to verbalize how you're feeling. But if we all reach out to each other, it kind of just creates that spider web that keeps growing, where at some point someone will get the help that they need because someone passed by them and reached out. Yeah. So just, it's so hard, and I'm aware of that. But there's also no shame in that. And I think we carry this shame that's just not it's not our burden to carry, because you're so worthy of the help you deserve. And we all go through tough times, and some can be like extreme cases and some can be mild. But I can say that the sooner you reach out, the easier it is to manage.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, last question. Finish this sentence. I believe.
I believe that people have so much more capacity in them than they realise. And if they realised how extraordinary they were, they'd go conquer the world. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love your attitude, your discipline, your determination, your zest for life. You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
All right.
There's the laughter.
Thank you for joining in on today's episode, and I hope this Strong Mind, Strong Body series empowers and inspires you. Make sure you've subscribed to our channel and leave a comment if you enjoyed today's podcast. You can also check out our website for more info about M26FIT at m26fit.au.